Joining us now in the studio is Tess Colby from Pierce County's Human Services Department to talk about the 2018 Point in Time Count. Hi, Tess. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
So, Tess, can you tell us what is the Point in Time Count?
So every year across Pierce County, we conduct a census where we count the number of people who have experienced homelessness the night before. So it's a very simple question. Where did you sleep last night? And what we're looking for are people who are sleeping outside or sleeping in shelter who are experiencing homelessness. And we do that count so that we get a better sense of not just how many folks are experiencing homelessness, but also where they're experiencing homelessness.
Why is it important to our community?
So we really, we need to understand the impact that homelessness is having on our community, on our neighbors, and on the folks that are experiencing homelessness. So one of the things that we do through the Point in Time Count is we survey people and we ask folks about what were the factors that may have led them to become homeless, what kinds of disabilities are they facing or barriers to getting back into housing, where did they live before they lost their housing, and that as a community really helps us understand what the conditions are that people are living in when they're homeless and what services they need to help them move from homeless to housed. It also gives us a better sense, I think, as a community of sort of the dispersion, if you will, of homelessness across the county. I mean, I think in the city of Tacoma, we see, because it's urban and it's dense, we see a lot of folks sleeping on streets or sleeping in shelters. And we know we've got a lot of services in the city of Tacoma. And what we learn from the Point in Time Count is really that homelessness impacts the entire county, that there are folks experiencing it all over the county. So it helps us at the county, and it also helps the folks at the city to really make sure that we're funding services across the region.
Okay, thank you. How does Pierce County use the information to help address homelessness?
It helps us to understand, as I said, the conditions that lead to people becoming homeless. So we know that the majority of folks will tell us, and have told us in the past, and will probably tell us this year, that they lost their housing through a combination of economic factors or family dissolution issues. We all know that rents are rising extremely quickly in the city of Tacoma and in Pierce County as a region, while our wages are staying fairly stagnant. And so we know now that homelessness is really the result of people losing their housing because they can no longer afford to pay their rent. So that helps us to understand better the need for affordable housing. We hear from folks that access to behavioral health is a critical need that people who are experiencing homelessness have. So that helps us understand that if we want to prevent homelessness, we need to be investing more in behavioral health services. For those folks who are homeless and need services now, what they tell us, what kinds of issues they're facing and what they need to help move them back into housing, that helps us to fund appropriate programs and to design services that will help them move from homeless to housed.
Okay. Now, Tess, can you briefly tell us what will be different about this year's Point in Time Count?
Yeah, we're pretty excited about that. In our partnership, the county and the city really collaborated together to design some different approaches to the Point in Time Count this year that we think is going to give us a much more accurate number. And by accurate, I mean it will also probably reflect a somewhat higher number of folks that are experiencing homelessness. So three main differences. The first is we're using a mobile app called Counting Us, and that mobile app allowed the volunteers to record answers to our survey questions on the app, but it also gives us real-time information. So during the count, we had a command center and we had real-time information of where people were and how many people were getting surveyed. It also tells us, it pinpoints geographically where the folks are, so it's also going to help us understand where encampments are and where people are sleeping, again, all across the county. So that was the first change. The second is we decided to do a nighttime count. So the Point in Time Count this year happened on January 26th. And what we did was we sent teams of outreach, street outreach workers from 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. and they went into predetermined encampments across the county, so in the city, but also in Puyallup and in Sumner and in Ording and other places across the county to count folks that were in the encampments. So that was new. We've known from prior counts that sometimes we don't catch people when they're at home in the encampments. And so by going overnight, we had a much better opportunity of counting people that are sleeping in those encampments. The third thing that's different is we're doing an observation count. So in prior years, we'd only counted people who agreed to be interviewed. And this year, if you are in an encampment and you identify as being homeless, but you don't want to do the survey, we'll still count you.
Awesome. Well, Tess, thank you so much for being here today.
Sure.
Great information, great resources. We really appreciate that.
My pleasure.
The data from the 2018 point-in-time count will be available in early April. For more information, visit the county's webpage. Now, don't go away. We'll get an update on what's taking place with the state legislature and how that will impact our community. We'll be right back.